That's Michelle Fleury. Now, the row over how to tax the tech giants who dominate the modern economy will take centre stage again in France today. That's where finance ministers from the G7 group of leading economies are meeting. The key question is whether the US can bridge its difference with France and the UK. So last week, President Macron's government became the first in the world to pass a tax on their revenues. The biggest, such as Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, will pay 3% on some of their sales in France if they have global sales of more than $840 million. Across the channel, the UK is saying it's planning to press ahead with a 2% tax on sales from April, but both countries have said they'll ditch their tax if an international agreement can be reached. So, as you can see, corporation tax rates do vary across the G7. The aim of an agreement would be to get more tax out of companies who route their profits through low-tax countries. Some of the fiercest opposition is coming from the US, where Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer said he was concerned the French measure unfairly targets American companies and opened an investigation that could lead to retaliatory tariffs. Well, we've got Stuart Thompson with us this morning, Head of Public Affairs at BDB Pitmans. Good morning, Stuart.
Morning,
good to see you. So this row is really coming to a head because France and the UK are pushing ahead with their own tax system on the big tech giants, which are mainly American.
They are mainly American. Europe hasn't been very good at those sorts of tech startups that have got to any sort of degree of size. So this is the French and the British government sort of slightly behind them, really trying to push those companies to pay tax. We know we've seen over the last number of years, it's been rumbling along for some time. They would say that they're not paying their fair share of tax. So this is France, the nation states, if you like, trying to reassert their control and say, actually, look, we need some of that revenue, we need some of that money, frankly, to pay for our services. If these big companies don't start paying, then there's going to be a bit of a hole in the country's finances.
Now, in terms of the G7 finance ministers meeting today in France, do we think we'll get some sort of international agreement? Because it's hard to broker that when you've got countries like Ireland, who are part of the EU, who really enjoy their low tax status, and they get a lot from it.
They've done well from it, and it's difficult to see the Americans at this present time really signing up to anything. As one of your previous pieces talked about the lack of trust in the cryptocurrency that Facebook has started. The reputation of a lot of these companies isn't very high, even in the US, and some of the presidential candidates are talking about splitting the companies up and looking at their structures and ending their monopolies. So this plays into domestic American politics as well as domestic European politics as well.
And it comes at a time when the Trump administration is clearly saying, if you don't play fairly, then we're going to slap tariffs on you. The relationship between Europe and the US is pretty fractious right now, with discussions about tariffs on cars, etc., etc. So it's quite a tough issue to work out at the moment.
It is, and France has always been slightly more antagonistic in its attitude towards American products and social positions than maybe other European countries, especially Britain. But you'll see that they think they can get somewhere with Trump and the Americans. But as we've seen in relation to China and other countries, Trump's not one for backing down very easily, so it's still to play for, and the idea of getting an agreement now it looks quite a way away in the short term.
OK, thank you, Stuart, for your time, and of course we shall keep an eye to see if there's any progress in France today.